Wife wants to have a baby with only one person in our relationship. I don't want it to happen. My wife, 34F, Lori, and I, 35M, have been together for 16 years and married for 13, and our relationship has been open since the day we met in college. About 8 years ago we met another couple, Kyle, 34M, and Andy, 33F, who were also open and poly, and we hit it off right away. In 2012 Andy got pregnant and, after a bit of math, we realized that I was probably the father. After discussing our future, we had a commitment ceremony in July 2012 and have all been a family ever since. When that occurred, Andy already had one baby with Kyle, and Lori had two by me. On the periphery of all this was Joseph, 34M. Joseph and Kyle have been friends since college, and Joseph, Kyle and Andy have had an intermittent sexual relationship since then. There was never anything serious there, but he was a regular third man in their threesomes. After the commitment ceremony, Joseph occasionally joined all of us for bedroom fun, but it was again an intermittent thing, and nothing serious. So it wasn't a huge surprise when Andy's baby turned out to be Joseph's and not mine. It was still a surprise, but it wasn't a problem. The baby was welcomed into our family, and Joseph became a more regular guest in our home. About a year after the baby was born, a few things happened that seriously changed things. First, both Andy and Lori got pregnant again. As we'd later learn, Andy's baby really was mine this time around, and Lori's baby is Kyle's. Shortly after that, Joseph was involved in a very serious motorcycle accident. He was hospitalized for nearly 2 months, lost his job, lost his apartment, and needed a lot of help. We ended up moving him in as a temporary thing to help him out. That was a year and a half ago. He's still here. Kyle is happy to have his old friend around all the time. The women both like him a lot, the sex is great between all of them, etc. 3 days ago, Lori was hinting around that she needed to talk about something serious, but didn't know how to broach it. After a bit of discussion, it came out. She wants to have one more baby. And not just anyone's baby. She wants to have Joseph's baby. She wants to go off the pill, and have Kyle and I either abstain from having sex with her, or to have only condom-protected sex until Joseph gets her pregnant. When I asked her why, she just shrugged her shoulders and said that she loved him too, and that it was only fair. She said that Andy had a child by each of the three of us, and that she wanted to have a child by each of us too. After a bit more discussion, it came out that the idea was his, and that he was feeling left out because he didn't have a child with her. Putting aside the childish notion that babies should be created solely to placate someone's sense of fairness, I have a few serious problems with this. First, we already have 6 kids in the house, which is already a bit much at times. I thought we were all done having kids, and I'm not sure I really want any more. Second, there is no commitment to Joseph. Where the rest of us have gone through a commitment ceremony to join ourselves to each other, he hasn't. But the biggest is also the simplest. I don't really like the guy. Never have. He's got this odd vibe and has always struck me as a bit untrustworthy. He honestly reminds me of a shady used car salesman. He also drinks too much, is a bit of a bigot, and has a personality that I find grating. I didn't object to him hanging around now and then because he was Kyle's friend, and I didn't have a problem with the sex because it was just sex and I understood the history of their relationship, but now I'm wishing that I had. To be honest, I've long hoped that he'd meet someone who wasn't into polyamory, just to get him out of our sex lives and relationship. When he moved in after the accident, I kept my mouth shut because they were just trying to be helpful, and the discussions about his long-term plans have always alluded to the idea that he'd be moving out again someday. When he'd really annoy me, I'd tell myself that it was just temporary. Now I'm facing the possibility that this guy is going to be around forever. Kyle and Andy love the idea and think that Lori having Joseph's baby is romantic. Lori is looking to cement some kind of bond to him. I, on the other hand, seem to get angrier and angrier every time I see him. Almost violently angry. I want to chase this guy out of our home and never let him in again. I want to punch him square in his smug face. I, temporarily, tolerated someone that I disliked because I wanted to be generous and helpful, and because he's the father of one of Andy's children. Now because I didn't want to be a dick and consign a disabled man to homelessness, he's worked his way into our relationship and seems quite content to stay there forever. If this pregnancy happens, I know he'll never move out. How do I even begin to approach this? I don't really care if Joseph gets hurt in this, but every other solution seems to lead to the other people in my family being miserable, them being angry with me, or me living in silent misery. I can't see any way to resolve this that doesn't involve hurting those I love, or hurting myself. Does anyone have any insights or suggestions? I don't want to lose this wonderful family that we've built, but every route I see seems to do it harm. What do you do when every other member of your family wants to include a new person into the family, and you don't? Update. Thank you everyone for your responses. Your comments have been helpful. Time for me to head home for the day, so I won't be responding any longer. I'll have to think through some of these suggestions and figure out how to proceed, but I will absolutely speak up and let everyone know my feelings. It may be too late, and the damage may be unavoidable, but it has to happen. Update 2. After I got home, I told Lori that we needed to talk and that we needed to seriously discuss some things before there was any more talk about babies. I told Andy and Kyle that we needed to have a meeting in the morning to discuss Joseph, but didn't want to go into it tonight because he and all the kids were home. They figured out really quickly that I'm not happy with things, and we'll hash it out tomorrow after Joseph heads off to his morning rehab visit and the older kids head off to school. Update 3. Wow, where to begin? We had the discussion this morning, and it went about as poorly as expected. I began by clearing the air about my feelings for Joseph. I reminded everyone that he and I have never got along, and that I've always viewed his presence in our home as a temporary thing. I told them all that I still view it as a temporary thing, and that I can't support any moves to make his presence in our home more permanent. That's when Kyle and Andy dropped a bombshell. Following Lori's announcement a few days ago, they'd been talking about asking Joseph to join our family formally through a commitment ceremony, to make him a permanent part of our household. They were apparently going to bring it up with me today. I reminded them that, as part of our original commitment, we'd agreed that any additions to our family had to be done unanimously, and made it very clear that I'd never agree to that. My statement led to a huge argument, which included them calling me selfish, and the statement that the three of them could hold a commitment ceremony without me. I didn't want to go there, but I shut that down by saying, understand that, if you do that, you're not talking about adding someone new to the family. You're talking about replacing me with him. I can't stay in a family that would hurt and disrespect me that way. That led to even more arguing that didn't have any real conclusion. That's when I turned to Lori. I told her that I loved her, and that it broke my heart that she wanted to have a child with someone I couldn't stand. I also told her that I found it offensive that he'd ask her to have a child to placate his own ego, but that I thought the request was fairly consistent with his lack of character. I reminded her that a child is not an object to be traded for affection or love, and that they should only be created as an expression of that love. Thanks, call me Brother G. I told her, without any hesitation, that having a child with Joseph would irrevocably change our relationship and drive a wedge between us. She would be choosing his happiness over mine, and that's how relationships end. She was crying the whole time, and when I was done she called me selfish and mean. She told me that she loved us both, and that she wouldn't choose between us. She flat out said that she wanted to have one more baby, that she'd already talked to Joseph about it, and that she wasn't going to go back on her word. She then offered to get rid of the exclusive part, saying that she was willing to go off the pill and have sex with both of us, letting fate decide the baby's paternity. I told her this was unacceptable, reminded her that I'm her husband and family, and he's not, and said that in not making a decision she was actually making a choice. I told her that I'd be more than willing to have another child with her, but that having a child with Joseph would be the end of us. And then I went to work. The discussion didn't really change anything or lead to any firm decisions, but the information is now out there and everyone knows where everyone else stands. We'll see where everything goes from here. Update 4. Final update. Well, in the days since my last update, a lot has happened. Some genuinely surprised me, and it looks like my family will be changing a bit, but things appear to be settling down. I should mention that this will be my last update. I mentioned to Lori that I'd been discussing our situation on the Reddit Poly group, and she wanted to read it. After bawling her eyes out as she read through it, she apologized to me for everything, and we spent the night together. No sex, just holding each other all night. This morning she asked me to not discuss this anymore until we get everything worked out, but said I could post one final update. So where to begin? First, Joseph is moving out. Yep, it actually happened. And the shocking thing? It was his idea. He finally demonstrated some of that nice guy personality to me that I've never been able to connect with. I knew that Joseph would be home when I returned from work yesterday, and I was honestly expecting the worst. I was sure that someone would have clued him in on our conversation and expected him to react with his usual asshole persona. It didn't happen. Instead, a few minutes after I came home, Joseph walked into my room and asked me to join him in the backyard for a conversation. I was expecting a fistfight, but got an apology instead. He admitted that we've never got along, and admitted that he's never liked me either, but said that he didn't feel right about coming between me and Lori. He went on to talk about how happy his son is in our family, and how he didn't want to destroy that family. At the same time, he talked about how much he loved living with his son, and how he really didn't want to go back to only seeing him once a week. I'd never thought about that. In the end, he proposed a solution that I accepted. There's a nice apartment complex about 2 blocks from our house, and he wants to get an apartment there when he lands a job. He's pretty good at what he does and already has some job leads, so he anticipates that will happen pretty soon. He can visit our house whenever he wants during the week. I'm at work anyway, and can spend up to 2 nights a week at my house to be closer to his kid. If he does it right, that means he could still potentially see his son 7 days a week, while I only have to deal with him for 2. It's a great solution that gives us both what we want. He's also already told Lori that he doesn't want to have a baby with her, so that's now off the table. He actually admitted that he wanted to have a baby with Lori, but said that he didn't want to stick her into the middle of a conflict over it. And then we had a beer together. I didn't even complain when he handed me one of his pisswater Coors Lights, totally not kidding. This guy really does fit certain stereotypes. My low opinion of the guy went up a notch. As for Lori, she was a tearful mess for most of the day apparently, and Joseph taking the baby off the table was fairly devastating for her. After I got home and we talked a bit, she unloaded her soul and let me know just how much she wants another baby, and how much it hurt her that neither Kyle or myself want one with her. And then she felt even more hurt when neither of us even clued in on her level of hurt over it. After several hours of talking, we came to an agreement. We're going to have one more baby, but we'll wait another year for it. And, interestingly, she wants it to be mine. Not Kyle's or Joseph's. Kyle apparently doesn't have a problem with that at all. So, what about her relationship with Joseph? Well, here's where polyamory and open relationships can get complicated. The commitment ceremony is off the table, but she still wants to date him and have some sort of a relationship with him. No babies, no pregnancy, just love and sex now and then. She won't ever sleep with him when he's staying over at our house, but she'll still be going out on dates with him, visiting him at his place from time to time, and will be staying overnight on occasion, like, maybe once a month. While I have to admit that I'm still not totally thrilled with that, it's really just going back to the relationship they had before he moved in with us. I'll tolerate it for her happiness. Andy, on the other hand, is a problem. She is still furious with me over all of this and isn't showing any signs of backing down. In a way, it's understandable. She's had a sexual, emotional relationship with Joseph since she was 21 years old, and is the mother of his child, so she was really looking forward to him becoming part of our family and was deeply hurt by my rejection. Kyle told me last night that she had even talked about leaving the family over it and moving in with Joseph, but that it was just angry talk. Right now, I can only get cold stares and slam doors from her. I really don't know how this is going to resolve itself, but for the sake of our daughter, I'll never stop trying. I stuck her in the middle of a fight between the fathers of 2 of her children, 2 men she loves, and she's furious at me for even forcing the choice. It may take some time for both of us to work through it. Kyle is a bit of a different story. He admitted that he knew Joseph and I didn't get along, and apologized to me for not talking to me sooner to make sure I was okay with everything. He apparently blames himself for the arguing, thinking that it was his job to run interference since Joseph was originally his friend, and I'm a life partner in his family. I told him not to worry about it because it was my fault that I didn't bring it up myself. Then we had a beer, Sierra Nevada West Coast Porter this time. Kyle has much better taste. So, with that, I'm going to wrap this up. I'd like to thank you all for your insights, commentary, and for putting up with my venting. Posting this here gave me a place to mentally work through some of these issues before I broached them with my family, and probably saved me from making some very ugly comments and choices. I genuinely appreciated reading your responses, and I know that Lori found many of your comments eye-opening and insightful as well. She loves the thought that we're a tribe. Because someone requested it, We may come back and do an AMAA at some point about the emotional and family dynamics of living in a large poly-tribal household, but we need to finish working through the current situation first.